It's interesting. I think largely because my temptation is to be kind of almost to be legalistic. So when we got married and even before that is, okay, what are the things that are supposed to be done as a Christian? Tithing. Okay, got to be done. Over time, and I guess where that, I don't know if danger is the word for it, where it can be for me a little bit dangerous, is that it becomes so habitual that the worship part can sometimes be lacking. There's never, I can't recall a time that I sat down and wrote the check, as a tithe and said, and done any kind of worship thought with it. And that's what's kind of come to my mind more recently, is to start thinking through the process that I'm giving. I'm not paying God. And I think maybe that's where the temptation can be. It can be, got to pay God like I'm paying everybody else. And I wish over the course of time that I had thought about that differently, so that it wasn't just another bill to pay. When we watch the videos, when we see the different testimonies and the different ways that we get to see them of the way that lives have been changed. When I'm sitting in a small group at the house and hear, somebody say a year ago our marriage probably wasn't going to last, and because of this small group. So those are the neat things that are going on in the church that you just don't see, that the money, is actually doing a lot of that. I guess from a personal standpoint, if we saw anything from that standpoint, I'm sure that that the trip that Andrew and Jay were able to take to Africa last year had some part of that money was coming from where the church was giving, and that was neat for Andrew to come back and to see the impact that it had on Andrew, and the fact that he's ready to go back next year. I mean, God was able to make that kind of plant that seed in Andrew to want to go back and have that interaction with those kids and and all the adults over in Africa. That was pretty big for us.
I've always gone back to the scripture that Christ said, give to Caesar what is Caesar, and I consider that the taxes that we pay, but also to God what is God's. And the tithe to me is the money that we give because we need to, and the time and the heart that I give to God because it is His.
It should be a worship, an act of sacrifice, and it is an act of obedience. So I think, probably that legalistic tendency is not necessarily a bad thing, because it is an act of obedience first. But at least when I look back at the Old Testament, when the tithe was started, when God talked through that process, it was an act of trust, I think. I mean, God was looking at, are you going to trust me that I'm providing everything else for you, similar to, I guess, going out and getting just enough manna for one day. It all tends to kind of tie together.